In a hypersexualized world, it can seem easy to overlook the fact that there are many people who simply are not driven by sex. Asexuality remains one of the most misunderstood and stigmatized topics, and I've been wanting to talk about it on my channel for a long time. So I'm so delighted to have Dan with me again. If you watched last week's video, you would know that Dan is an educator as well as the co-founder of the Thane Queer Collective, and today we're going to be talking about asexuality. So Dan, you identify as asexual.
Yes.
Can you just clarify to our viewers what that means, because it's still a term that many people are not familiar with?
So asexuality basically is a big spectrum. So, and as you know, spectrums have two sides, and then there's a whole range of other things that are in between. At one end there are sex positive people, and at the other end there are sex repulsive people, and in the middle there are a bunch of people who feel differently about feel different things about sex, about how comfortable they are about it, listening to it or talking about it or doing it, because there are asexual people who also do have sex. It's not that we do not have sex at all, but it's just that our attraction to a particular person is not based on sexual desires. This is something I did not choose. Asexuality is an orientation, and this is how we've been feeling. This is how our attractions are based on. I can't help it. I do not control any of it. The pressure of living up to everyone's expectations, society's standards, and all these perceptions and ideas about everything, be it sex, gender, sexuality, anything. So it's so prominent that people don't know that this can be there too. ये ऐसा भी हो सकता है, ऐसा किसी को लगता ही नहीं है.
There's so little representation, and we're not taught these words.
Yeah.
So when we feel certain ways, we don't even know that there is a term for it.
When I was in such situations where things were about to happen, I was about to have sex and I didn't do it because I didn't feel like it, but I didn't know what it was. A lot of people used to tell me like it's just the first time fear that you are having in your head, etc, etc, but twice, thrice, it can't keep happening again and again, right? So people have sexual desires, and to help with them, people also masturbate, right? But I used to find myself not masturbating for months together at all, because there's just no desire there's just no desire to do that in the first place. And I used to always constantly feel like there is something wrong with me, I think, because that's I couldn't see that, I couldn't read about it anywhere else. I felt like, so that's what happens when you can't see people like you out there. You feel like you are there's something wrong inside you. But 3 years ago, I attended this Asexuality 101 workshop that was conducted by Pragati Singh. She runs Indian Aces. I attended her workshop, and it's like a jigsaw puzzle that came together. And I felt like, okay, I belong to this. I feel like I belong to this term. And she had explained it so nicely. I think she keeps conducting workshops throughout the year. You should definitely attend one, even if you do not identify as ace. You should still go, and because it's also helpful to understand your sexuality as well, not just your asexuality, so.
People often think that if they don't identify a certain way, then they don't need to learn about that. But so often you learn about yourself from learning about others, Could we also just talk a little bit about the difference between asexuality and romance or aromantic people? There's this conception that people who are asexual don't ever want to have a relationship, or they don't want anything to do with even romance, which isn't the case. And as you said, is a spectrum. So could we just clarify all of that a little?
It's just that the sex part that's a problem. Like with me, if I talk about myself, identifying as ace. So for me, it's the sex. Everything that comes before sex is fine with me, which is intimacy. So I label it as intimacy. So I'm completely fine with intimacy, but it's just that the sex, that the actual act is not my thing. So there are a lot of people who on various degrees are comfortable with something, not comfortable with something. So it's clearly like dependent on them. I think asexuals are mostly romantic. They identify themselves as romantically attracted to their partners. So for example, if someone is bi, so they wouldn't use bisexual, they will use the word biromantic. So you get that, like if someone is pansexual and they identify as ace, so they will use the word panromantic.
Right.
So similarly.
So there are obviously people who are asexual but who have a variety of romantic orientations, and then on one end of the spectrum there are people who are aromantic as well.
When I started reading about it, I read that aromantic folks do not want a relationship as well. But then there are aromantic people who do feel like having a relationship. I don't know how to describe it, because I am dating a guy who identifies as asexual and also aromantic. So with him, it's just like learning what aromanticism was. If we take care of each other, when we are together, we'll just we'll talk a lot about so many things. And he's also he's doing his PhD right now in gender and community, and he's also learning. He learns from me, and we're just being there together. We're not labeling this anything. We do not call each other's I'm not his boyfriend, he's not my boyfriend. We just have this label called partner. So this is the label usually used by gender non-conforming people too with their partners. So they do not use the terms girlfriends, boyfriends. So it's just plain things doing together, watching a movie or going grocery shopping or cooking together. Just companionship, like basic companionship. You do not have to. So if people can have a lot of sex without falling in love, why can't people be together without all these expectations of sexual?
So interesting you bring that up, because people seem to have no problem with the idea of casual sex, using people for sex, and yet they find it so hard to fathom that you could have emotional intimacy with someone without wanting sex. Because of the fact that awareness is limited though, how has your community, your peers, your family reacted? You said you're very out.
Yes.
And your Instagram and everything. I mean, I love that you're taking it upon yourself to educate others and represent, but I'm just curious about the level of openness and acceptance currently.
It's not that much, because at home it's totally different ball game when you can't talk about the fact that you like this person of your same sex or same gender, or if you can't talk about your own gender identity. I don't know how difficult it would be for someone to talk about sex, because that's not how Indian parents would even they wouldn't even like to listen to the word sex. Forget about the fact that I want to tell you something about it. So it's that. So at home it's weird. I only talk to my mother, and she knows about it, but I think she's quite fine with it right now, because she doesn't have an option. She can't force me to marry any guy, right? Because I have explained it to her, that's not how it works. I wouldn't want to marry someone who is allosexual, who is a sexual person, because that's not a safe place for me. Other than that, there have been a lot of times when people ask you stupid questions like, what do you have in your pants, or do you even feel anything down there, you do not have any sensations, or what. So these things are just lame, because that's none of your business, because the decision that I take about my sexual life is mine, which probably obviously never is going to affect your life again. So why do you have to be so agitated about the fact that I don't want to have sex?
Exactly.
So all these things do happen. People ask you weird questions, and which shows that there isn't much acceptance out there. So
what about in terms of on the internet? Are there any resources so that people who identify as aces can find each other, connect with each other, just because it's an identity that isn't well understood by the general public? How do you negotiate the sort of romantic relationships that you might seek? Do you end up also considering dating sexual or allosexual people? Or do you try and seek out aces, and what sort of resources exist?
Sometimes it's really difficult. I know about this one app, but it didn't help me because there are not a lot of people on it. But usually what happens is, if you're out there talking about it a lot, it is bound that you will come across someone who also relates to you or understands you. That is how I met a lot of people on Instagram. Because I started posting about it, because I started talking about it, use them hashtags in your post. I don't know, because these Instagram algorithms work in mysterious ways. And that's how I met my partner as well, through Instagram. And even on Tinder, I am on Tinder, so I openly mentioned that I am asexual, so that and I have come across people who have mentioned the same in their bio. So yeah, that's how I think we find each other.
And would you say you would prefer to date or to have a romantic relationship with only people who are asexual, or would you consider also having a partnership with someone who identifies as
I do
sexual?
not mind. I do not mind for one. It's not a problem. But it sometimes what happens is it becomes really tiring for me to explain things to person who is allosexual, right? So I will prefer to date someone who is in the spectrum or at least understands it, because I don't want to spend the first 6 or 1 year of my relationship with them explaining everything, and then I have been in relationships like that and it hasn't gone down well. So one of my partners before, they hadn't really considered things that I conveyed to them, and I had to do things that I didn't want to, sexual acts that I didn't want to engage in, and I had to because they couldn't just understand. And then it was just a very weird situation, right? Because I couldn't communicate properly at that moment, and I felt like the fact that I already mentioned that I am ace was totally sidelined or not respected at all. So that's why I will prefer dating someone who is in the A spectrum.
I get that. I think many people really struggle to wrap their head around the fact that a relationship can be complete.
Yeah.
A long-term romantic relationship can be complete without sex. So they'll ask questions like, wait, but how is a non-sexual romantic relationship different from a friendship, you know?
Yeah.
and it really would explain and it doesn't sometimes click for people.
I would obviously give the example with the person that I'm dating right now. So we've been like together almost like, I think it's 8 or 9 months now. I love this person. So love doesn't usually has to end up with sex or equate with sex, right? I love this person, I love being with them, I love talking to them, I love listening to them. That's it. I love doing things with them. But it's different than friendship. How difficult is it to like explain this to me? I mean, why should I even explain it to people? Because this is how I want to describe my relationship, and it's totally up to me.
It's just, I think, the conditioning partly that makes people assign worth to the relationships in their lives based on the likelihood of sex, especially men. You know, I mean, I've heard men say like, oh, if she's not sleeping with me, I have no time for her, which is the way we condition cisgendered heterosexual men, you know, to assign women their worth based on how sexually attractive they are to the man, based on their likelihood of sleeping with the man. And in a way, we're just commodifying people in this bizarre way. So I feel like at one level, allosexual people have something to learn from the way value is attributed to human relationships by the ace community.
It's not that we are undermining the sexuality of allosexual people. You can be as sexual as you want, but if someone doesn't want to be that sexual or not at all,
that's fine.
Let them be.
Exactly. Thank you so much, Dan. Thank you so much. Guys, you absolutely have to follow Dan on Instagram. You will learn a lot. I am constantly learning myself. It's at queer_rave on Instagram. That's Dan's account. You should also check out the Thane Queer Collective. Thank you so much, Dan, for being on the channel.
Thank you.
I hope you guys liked this video. Don't forget to give it a big thumbs up. Please subscribe to my channel, share this video, leave us a comment. We'll see you next time. Bye.